Hello, in this video I'm going to explain the Bitcoin history using a graphic of the timeline, which has all the major upgrades to the Bitcoin protocol. So the graph is called Main Consensus Forks of Bitcoin from 2009 up to the current day. So this does not feature code forks, which just use the blockchain concept like Litecoin or Dogecoin. This only displays the consensus fork, so changes to the Bitcoin network, so which continue the same Bitcoin blockchain. And as you can see, over the Bitcoin history, there has been a number of splits, so we will talk about all of that. This graph was made by a Reddit user called Lugaxer, and he updates these every so often when there needs to be added new things. And so I'll post this in the description because there is some interesting discussion in the Reddit comments. So let's take a closer look at this timeline. As many people know, the Bitcoin network was launched in 2009 in January. And the first upgrade that is displayed here is in 2010, the addition of op-and-op functions. So opcodes are the operations in Bitcoin script. And this was a hard fork, so that's important. It's displayed for all of the upgrades. And there's two types, hard forks and soft forks. Hard forks, so it's a bit of a technical concept, but a hard fork means expanding the rule sets, so allowing different new things that were not valid before, whereas a soft fork means restricting what is currently valid. So a thing that was valid before is no longer valid, so they're a bit opposites. Hard forks means that everybody in the network needs to upgrade to stay on the same rules, whereas a soft fork is backwards compatible, so old clients will still follow the same network. They don't need to upgrade. So this is an important difference because Bitcoin has changed its policy to only use soft fork upgrades. But many people don't know that up till 2013, there were still hard fork upgrades on the Bitcoin network. So let's continue. In 2010, there was actually a very important change to the protocol because there was a value overflow incident, so an inflation bug, and there was a soft fork, an emergency soft fork needed to fix this. So if you Google this, Bitcoin inflation bug 2010, you will find an article like this one. It's called Bitcoin History Part 10, the 184 billion BTC bug. So it was an accident that was something unusual that was spotted by developer Jeff Garzik. It wasn't meant to happen, and there was a thread started within the hour called Overflow Bug Serious. We need a fix ASAP. So it was a hectic time back then, but luckily it was fixed quite quickly. But it was a serious incident in Bitcoin history, and it also showcased what would happen in the case of emergency, because we can look at what happened back then and how quickly it was fixed, and how the attacker actually didn't end up with the billions of Bitcoin, but because there was a soft fork, so some of the transactions got reversed. Then in 2010, there was another important addition to another important change to the Bitcoin protocol. It was the introduction of a 1 megabyte block size limit. So each block in the blockchain is a certain size, and this limits, as a spam protection measure, a denial of service protection measure for the nodes on the network, it limits the maximum size to 1 megabyte. And at the time, this was a technical limit just for denial of service protection, but this ended up being a very political parameter and something that has decided the future of Bitcoin. So we will come back to this in a bit later on the timeline. So in 2012, there was another important upgrade. This one is called Pay to Script Hash. So this standardizes the way that Bitcoin smart contracts what they look like. Before that, there were a lot of possible locking scripts, but none of them were standard. So Pay to Script Hash standardized what a Bitcoin smart contract looks like. Then later in 2013, there was a new addition which is called block height in Coinbase. So most of these improvements are called BIPs, Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, and they all have a number. So you can map the BIP to the new proposal. So they have official technical numbers. Then later in 2013, and I actually don't know much about this, there was a database migration. So migration from the Berkeley DB to LevelDB. And this was another hard fork, so the last hard fork in Bitcoin history. And then between this time, so it's 2 years until another upgrade happened. So 2014 is when the Bitcoin block size debate started. So the block size debate is about this 1 megabyte limit, whether to increase it and when to increase it and by how much, and about the different visions for the future of Bitcoin. Because some people said 1 megabyte would be fine forever. There can be different layers on which Bitcoin scales, and it doesn't need to scale on the blockchain. So this debate is taking place from 2013-2014 in the background. And then we see another upgrade. It's something technical to do with cryptography, strict DER encoding for signatures, a soft fork. Then in 2015 and 2016, there's 2 new opcodes introduced, both for time locks on Bitcoin. So it allows advanced Bitcoin transactions to check whether they reach a certain age. So whether the transactions are old enough and have reached a certain time. So the debate has been heating up until from 2014 all throughout the years up to 2017 when things became unsustainable. So there was different ideas for how it should play out, but what ended up happening is the people who wanted an increase from this 1 megabyte all teamed together and did a minority split from the network. So they just this started Bitcoin Cash. So an important figure in this is Maurice Séchet, among others, who created the new implementation, the rules, the network rules, and a new client for a Bitcoin full node, which allowed up to 8 megabyte block size. So this was a fork, so a split in the Bitcoin blockchain where nodes with different rules followed the standard Bitcoin history, whereas the hard fork needed to be opt-in. People need to run different nodes, and it became Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin continued with a 1 megabyte limit, and then later had a SegWit soft fork. So SegWit is a malleability fix. This is something technical, but it's needed to allow for Lightning, the Lightning network, and this is their vision of how to scale with 1 megabyte blocks. So Lightning is a layer 2, which means you can it's built on top of Bitcoin, and it's meant to scale Bitcoin without increasing the block size. And another thing is Lightning technically increases the block size also. It introduced the concept of a virtual megabytes, virtual bytes, and the block size limit measured in virtual bytes is 4 megabytes. But it's not actually a 4 megabyte increase. The actual capacity is only between 1.4 and 1.8 megabytes, but with no plans to increase it in the future. Whereas Bitcoin Cash, as you can see, it within the year, it upgraded the block size limit. It increased it to 32 megabytes. And all in this time, there was a different Bitcoin fork, a different minority split from the Bitcoin network called Bitcoin Gold. And Bitcoin Gold hasn't had a very active history. So it's I think it's currently somewhere in the 100 list on CoinMarketCap. So it's not a very big project. So SegWit was a major change to the Bitcoin protocol because it allowed for Lightning. And as you can see, Bitcoin Cash was forked off before SegWit. There also was a lot of opposition to SegWit from in the Bitcoin Cash camp. So there was never a SegWit upgrade on Bitcoin Cash. And then Bitcoin Cash introduced these bi-yearly hard fork. So as you can see, Bitcoin Cash started with a hard fork, but continued the trend of doing hard forks for each upgrade. And then the probably most important next state, there was some minor thing called Bitcoin Classic, but it's not too important in the grand scheme of things. Then in 2018, so you can imagine Bitcoin Cash is the rebel, the alliance of rebel groups, which all did not agree with this 1 megabyte limit, but didn't really formulate a positive vision of how the future of Bitcoin should look like. So there were different visions among the rebel group. So this is what led to the split in 2018. There was a controversial figure, still well known today, Craig Wright. He claims to be Satoshi and started his own fork, Satoshi's Vision, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Bitcoin SV. And so all the while he was still tangentially involved in Bitcoin Cash. And this event is known as the hash wars, because there was attacks on different blockchains with miner power. So this is a very interesting and fun time in Bitcoin history, in the broad sense, so in the Bitcoin family. And this also had a negative impact on the crypto market in general. And Bitcoin SV has had some pretty weird changes since. So for example, they now allow for unlimited blocks. They also phased out a lot of the early innovation in Bitcoin. For example, they phased out pay to script hash, check lock time verify, check sequence verify, among other time locks. And then more recently, they added a UTXO confiscation feature. They call this digital asset recovery. So this allows miners to confiscate certain Bitcoin SV on their blockchain. So they have gone down a pretty very controversial path. Then let's take a look at the Bitcoin Cash history from that point onwards, from the hash wars in 2018. So this was at the time called Bitcoin Cash ABC sometimes, because ABC was a primary Bitcoin Cash node. It was also an important node in the creation of Bitcoin Cash. And there were multiple new upgrades. All of the while, Bitcoin hasn't had an upgrade since 2017 on this timeline. So the next upgrade for Bitcoin is only in 2021. So that's 4 years of no network changes, no improvements. So let's take a look at Bitcoin Cash. So here it says Schnorr signatures, and here it says this is actually more important, object data C. So this allows for oracles, and CTOR is actually an scaling improvement, so a bit more technical. And as you can see, Taproot, the soft fork, also added Schnorr signatures, so it's a bit of the same innovation on Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. But additionally, it also allowed for Taproot and Tapscript. So quite a lot of features, but also very technical features. And since 2021 up to now, Bitcoin hasn't seen another upgrade, and it's also not clear what's still yet to come. So all the current changes are quite controversial, with many people that don't agree about the Bitcoin vision. So this vision, this positive vision of what does Bitcoin need to look like with a 1 megabyte limit, still hasn't been fully worked out, as can be seen from the roadmap on Bitcoin, because it's not clear what will be next. Then on the Bitcoin Cash side, the forks, the splits to the network hadn't stopped, because there was another controversial event in 2020, again November 15th, so 2 years later from the previous one. This was called Hash Wars, and this was the main team, so the Amaury Séchet, the Frenchman which was mentioned earlier, from the Bitcoin ABC team, which was so well known, decided after funding issues to introduce a Coinbase rule, so a sort of tax which would pay him 8% from all mining rewards. So this was very controversial. and then had received a lot of pushback. So this was a no-go for the super majority of the Bitcoin Cash community. So he created his own version, which ended up being called eCash after a certain period for branding. And the majority part of the fork was then called the major node implementation Bitcoin Cash node. So this remained to be called Bitcoin Cash with the ticker BCH. But around all of these times of contention, it is never clear what the future will look like, which part of the split retains which ticker. So some people still call Bitcoin BTC, Bitcoin Legacy, or Bitcoin Core to differentiate him from the other versions of Bitcoin, which could at a certain time also have received a Bitcoin name. So there's certainly a timeline in which Bitcoin Cash would have had the Bitcoin name, but because of various political and strategic reasons, Bitcoin Cash ended up being a minority split. So this leads us to the introduction of eCash, and the recent upgrade they have done on eCash was the Avalanche post-consensus hard fork. As you can see, the full line of proof of work in the Bitcoin family no longer continues here. That's because Avalanche makes eCash into a hybrid with proof of stake and proof of work together. So this is a very large change, maybe as large as the Coinbase rule. So this would have also been very controversial on Bitcoin Cash. So in hindsight, it might have been good that they started their own minority fork, their own network to implement these changes. And then Bitcoin Cash has had two major upgrades, one called introspection, adding introspection functionality, and the other called cash tokens, so native tokens on Bitcoin Cash. Yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for the Bitcoin timeline. I hope you learned a lot, and yeah, zooming out, it learns us a lot about the history, about hard forks, about the controversial events like inflation bugs, about proof of work, proof of stake, about the hash wars. And overall, I'm very uncertain about the future of Bitcoin, and I'm very optimistic about the future of Bitcoin Cash. And I'm very interested to see how the future will play out. See you in the next video. Bye.